Hey folks, back again to talk about Star vs. the Forces of Evil, Episode 7, Lobster Claws, and I didn't catch the name of the second segment, sorry. I have to say this was not that great a pair of episodes. Lobster Claws was amusing, I guess. The second segment just left me completely cold. But I guess we'll start by talking about Lobster Claws. It was fairly predictable. Like, pretty much from the outset, I knew this would be Star and Marco concocting some kind of scheme to help Lobster Claws get his job back. But, I mean, basically from the moment he got fired. I guess the part where they were trying to help him to be good was a little less expected, but the outcome of it was pretty predictable. But I do actually like that they played with this idea that, you know, yeah, there's good in everybody, but it's buried real deep in some people. You know? I mean, in theory, a person could do nothing but terrible things for the first half of their life and nothing but good things for the second half. You know, that's just the nature of having agency. But most people, their behavior comes from how they feel about things, and that's not something that changes easily. So, yeah, regardless of the kind of behavior, most people will usually behave similarly to how they've behaved in similar situations in the past. And so it is with Lobster Claw. You know, we don't see what sets him off on a rampage that destroys 4 city blocks. But he's already been set up as one of Ludo's minions, as the kind of creature, kind of person, who has, you know, who's a monster, which is to say, who has both the power and a history of going on rampages. So it's not that surprising that he encounters something that sets him off to go on one. Which is not to say that, you know, redemption or whatever is impossible, just that, well, as they put it at the end, he's got good in him, but not much. Because ultimately, good and evil aren't substances that exist inside of people. They're not things that are an innate part of a person's nature or anything like that. They're actions, behaviors. And like any other behavior, they're learned, they develop into habits, they are chosen based on emotion, and therefore can change, but are hard to change. Because that's literally all anybody ever does, is what feels like the thing they should do. And of course it gets complicated because we are capable of having many different feelings at once, and as such, sometimes they contradict, and thus sometimes we feel conflicted about the things we do. But it still comes down to, you do what you feel like doing. And sometimes it doesn't feel that way, because when we say that, what we usually mean is, oh, you know, you do what would make you happy, but that's not always true. Sometimes you get a conflict between what would make you happy, but you're afraid of the consequences of doing that. So you do something else. That's still doing what you feel like, because fear is a feeling. But, you know, or something would give you pleasure, but you're afraid of the kind of person it would make you if you did that. What kind of person would I be if I, followed the impulse? You're in a candy store and, like, the impulse occurs to you to grab a handful of candy out of a bin and eat it. That would give you pleasure, but perhaps you're afraid of the consequences. Perhaps it, would cause you to feel wrong about yourself. Regardless of the reason, you do it or don't do it because of your feelings about it. If your desire for that candy in that moment is greater than your fear of the consequences or your desire to be a particular kind of person, then you're going to do it. That's just how it works. That's what choices are. Lobster Claw has been established as somebody who, what does he want out of life? What are his feelings about things? Well, clearly he gets angry very easily. That's kind of goes along with being a monster. He, wants to be good, but he also wants to eat squirrels and kittens and children and ice cream. And he wants to have Ludo's respect and be able to work for him. And he wants to revel in destruction. And so he wants things that contradict each other. And we get a moment of conflict unleashed by the wand, but ultimately, he snatches the wand because that's who he wants to be. That's what he really wants. Now, it's possible that, because people are, again, complicated. And one thing that happens is that, maybe I know that candy right now is something I very much want. And so given a choice between candy right now and consequences later, I'll take the candy now. But I'm not talking about candy right now. I'm talking about candy tomorrow. I'm going to be going to the candy store tomorrow. Well, I know that I will struggle with the temptation to eat the candy. But I also know that those consequences would come after. And candy tomorrow isn't enough of a temptation to make those consequences worth it. So I can sit here and come up with ways to alter my emotions. That's what a moral code is it's Odysseus at the mast. The story from the Odyssey where there's the sirens, and anyone who hears the sirens is so tempted by their song that in that moment, all they want to do is go to the sirens, even though they know that the consequences of that will be death. But knowing that in that moment you will not be able to deal with the temptation, you will want that so much that will override your feelings about the consequences. But right now, hearing the sirens and going to them doesn't sound that good right now. Certainly doesn't sound worth death. So right now, I can prepare myself by stuffing my ears with cotton, or tying myself to the mast, either avoiding the temptation, or setting something up so that I either can't succumb to the temptation, or, when you're not dealing with magical songs, you can set things up so that you can do things to deliberately increase the consequences. For example, you can train yourself so that there will be additional feelings of guilt if you do it. And then maybe that's enough to cause you not to. That's basically what we do with kids. A child is always going to grab the candy, a small child, because they want the candy. And they don't care that much about the consequences. But you teach them to fear the consequences more. You teach them to feel guilt or shame or whatever tool you're using to teach morality. Because, those things get a bad rap, but that's what they're for. Guilt and shame are the emotions that make you want to be moral. Guilt, shame, righteousness, and pride. Those are the emotions that make you want to be a moral being. So you teach kids to have them so that they'll do that. And that's the thing, is Lobster Claw doesn't have those things, and they don't do a very good job of teaching those things to him. They're trying to teach him behaviors, but they're not training him to feel any differently. And so in the end, he goes back with Ludo. And plus, the episode was reasonably funny, I guess. Unlike the next episode, which was just sort of pointless. I don't really get what they were going for. I don't know. The episode was boring, the second part. And, not Lobster Claw, the second part was boring, and the jokes didn't work for me. And so basically my mind latched onto what was available, which was trying to decide if the Monster Princess was a racist caricature or not, and if so, what she was a caricature of. Because I definitely felt there was something uncomfortable there, but I couldn't quite put my finger on exactly what. I think maybe she was mixing multiple stereotypes, or something. I don't know. Just something about her felt wrong. And I was so bored with the rest of the episode that was the only thing I had to focus on, which is a problem. In a better episode, I would probably let it slide, simply because I can't decide exactly what the problem is. But in this, that was all I had, was, wow, there's something uncomfortably racialized about this character. And she wants to steal the white girl's face. Also, yet again, they're using fat as code for gross. Which, I mean, yeah, some fat people are gross. I'm fat and gross. But trust me, I was gross when I was thin, too. They're independent properties. But it's coded that way. There's just a lot of things that are slightly off. Or maybe more than slightly off. Maybe other people would be more sensitive to these things. It would be like, no, it's a horrible depiction of whatever it is that it's a horrible depiction of. Me, it was just like a little off, and I would normally have ignored it if there were anything else in the episode worth paying attention to. But the episode bored me and wasn't funny. And that left me with nothing to do but try to figure out what was wrong with that character. And that's it. Sorry for the short vlog, but that's all I got. That's all I really had to talk about with this one. It was one... Frankly, I think the second half was probably the worst episode they've had so far. The first half was So, just kind of a weak episode. It happens. Most shows have them. So, better luck next time, I guess. Bye.